So I want to start off by telling you a story about when I taught in Luxembourg many years ago. At the time, I was actually living in Belgium, but driving across the border to work for a school in Luxembourg. Because as many of you know, Luxembourg is a huge financial center and there's lots of international companies there. So English is very important as a language. So my day would begin around 7 o'clock in the morning. I'd leave my apartment, I'd drive across the border in the traffic, and I would arrive at the business where I was teaching that day, probably around 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd teach my class, which only lasted for 50 minutes, and then I wouldn't have another class until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that means I'd be sitting in my car in a supermarket car park doing nothing. And this was the days before I had internet on my phone. So literally I'd be sitting there and I would be listening to tapes. I was learning Spanish at the time, and maybe I downloaded some movies onto my laptop, but I was pretty bored because I didn't want to drive all the way to another country to come back across the border because I didn't want to waste all that fuel. But in recent months, the way I've been teaching is very, very different. Now, when my lesson starts at 8 o'clock, I don't have to turn up to work until 5 minutes before because I'm teaching online. So what we're going to talk about today is how you can find free tools you probably already have access to, and actually start teaching students online. You can do this through a school, but you can also do this on your own. And I'm actually going to talk about ways that you can find students later in the video, so make sure you stick around. So there are some great benefits when it comes to actually teaching online. The first one, obviously, is you avoid the commute. So when I was teaching in Luxembourg, I literally had to drive across a border, and it would take me anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour. Even today, living in Taipei, if I want to go and work at my school, I have to jump on a bus and it can take me 40 minutes, sometimes an hour and a half each way. But teaching online, you don't have a commute. You can actually teach anywhere you want, but you can also set up a pretty comfortable setup for yourself at home. I have my home office and that's where I teach. The other thing is you can actually earn more money. The thing is, if you actually find your own students, it's possible that you could earn a lot more than you would working for a school or even working for an online platform. So if you want to find out a little bit more about my take on some of these online teaching platforms, you can actually see my video where I talk about Amazing Talker and sort of my 2 cents about what it would be like working for them. And of course, the big thing is the flexibility. You can literally work anywhere and you can teach someone from anywhere too. So this is great if you want to become a digital nomad and if you want to get out of where you're living and move abroad, for example, Asia. So as great as teaching online is, there are some issues that you have to overcome, issues that you don't face in the classroom. So what I'm going to talk about now is mainly geared at adults, but you have similar issues with children and some other ones. But the main thing for me is when it comes to observing your students. What I like to do in a real classroom is often walk around, and if you've got a good setup, you know, the tables in the middle, you're able to walk around and look at what the students are doing. This is great if you're testing, you know, where they are in an exercise, what question is everyone on. You can see that very easily. You can look at the writing. If they're writing an essay question for the IELTS, for example, you can see exactly what they're doing. If you're doing a speaking activity, you can sort of listen. I often kind of hide in the corner, cover my face so nobody can see what I'm doing. So you can listen to people and pick up on their mistakes. That's not so easy when you're in a big kind of virtual classroom with everybody listening at the same time. Often it becomes a bit of a lecture. The other thing I found quite tricky when I first started working online was doing group work. It was really hard, it seemed, to actually get our students into groups, into pairs, and do the things that I normally do in the classroom, things I've been doing for the last 10 years. But I'm going to talk about how I fixed that a little bit later on in the video, so stick around for that. Another huge change that you have to get over when you're teaching online compared to teaching in a classroom is that you lose your whiteboard. So As the saying goes, a good teacher only needs a pen and a whiteboard. And you can do so much if you have a nice big whiteboard. You can lay out all of your exercises. You can make it really easy for the students to understand what you're talking about. And that's kind of taken away from you to a certain extent when you teach online. There are ways around it, which we're going to talk about later, but that was a big one for me. And perhaps the final thing is just understanding. When you're face to face with a student and you have the group in front of you, it's quite easy to see from their facial expressions, or if they're kind of asking questions amongst themselves, whether or not they're understanding what you're saying, or if you need to actually explain it a little bit better. Now, this has been a real issue actually teaching online, because my students in my current class have this weird habit of not turning on their cameras. So it's literally me and then 8 students with blank screens. And I don't know what they look like, I don't know what they're doing. It's really unnerving. So there are issues that exist when you're teaching online, but luckily there are lots and lots of free tools that you can use today to overcome them. So let's talk about that. So when it comes to video conferencing software, you have many different choices, especially due to what's been happening around the world. These kind of services have been popping up left, right, and center. The classic ones are obviously Zoom or Google Meet. And I've used both of them and they're good in each way. But when it comes to actually a free account, not having to pay for the service, I would always go for Zoom. It has many more features that you can use in the free tier that don't exist with Google in the free tier. And this is particularly important when coming to my first solution to all those issues with teaching online. So the first question is, how do you turn a video conferencing software platform into something which you can break down into groups that you can teach as you would in the classroom? The solution is break rooms. So on Zoom, all you have to do is go into your account, and if you click on the settings and you go down to where it says break rooms, just click this on. This gives you a feature where you can create as many break rooms as you need. So let's imagine we've got 8 students in the class, which is actually true for me at the moment. So if I set up 4 different break rooms, that means I can split my 8 students into 4 pairs and give them something to talk about. I can also split them into 2 groups of 4 if I want. And the really cool thing with the break rooms in Zoom is that you can either manually assign them if you want to put stronger students together, or a strong student and a weak student together, or you can automatically assign the break rooms, which is really cool because it kind of like gives you a random set of pairs each time. I found that really useful. So all you're going to do is you open the break rooms, the students get a notification, they join the break room that you've assigned them to, and then when you want everyone to come back into the main room, you just close the break rooms and they get 60 seconds to come back. Now, Google Meet does actually have this function as well, but it's not in the free tier. You actually have to pay something like $8 a month to get this. Now, I do like Google Meet because it doesn't limit you on how long the actual meeting can be, because Zoom, I think it limits you to 40 minutes unless you pay for the higher tier. But having that break room function is just so useful. It's worth just stopping the lesson after 40 minutes and starting it again if you need to. The other cool function I like about Zoom is the share function. So you can share not only a whiteboard, which you can use. I don't actually use this that often because I'm not very good at drawing, but you can share web pages, you can share videos, you can share PDF documents that you're working on, Word documents that you're working on. And I often use something like Word doc or a Google Doc for writing tasks, because it's really easy to show exactly what you need to do. And for me personally, it really helps the students understand what I'm writing, because my handwriting is terrible. Another thing that you can share in Zoom is audio files. So if you want to do a listening, you can easily share the sound from your computer, and then everybody in the meeting will hear it. Now, one of the things I've discovered that you can't do is you can't actually share your screen and the audio file, as far as I've seen. But one thing that you can do is you can embed an audio file into something like a Word doc or a Google Doc, and you can have the questions on screen and play the audio at the same time. It works really, really well. Another way that I found to make the lessons a little bit more interactive is actually using Google Docs. because there's a great feature in Google Docs, which is where you can share the file with other people. And you can either grant access as a viewer or as an editor. So what I've been doing often with my pair work, when I've put my students into their break rooms and we're talking about writing, is I've created a special document for each group. And then I share that file with them as an editor, and I can actually see what they're doing in real time. So this kind of gives me an idea of when I can stop the activity, what issues certain groups are having, and it's a really great way of making it a very interactive lesson, as interactive as it would be face-to-face. And also, don't be afraid of doing PowerPoint presentations. I found they'd be really, really useful. The best thing is when you create a PowerPoint presentation, you get to keep it and you get to share it with your students as well. And this is much better than having something on a whiteboard which you simply wipe away at the end of the lesson. So if you want to teach really good lessons online, I would really recommend using Zoom and using Google Docs. If you're lucky enough to work for a school, as I do, and they will pay for Zoom or they will pay for the Google Meet account, then it doesn't really matter what you use, they're both great. But if you're doing this for free, for yourself, then I would go for Zoom and I would use the Google Suite facilities because they're really, really great, especially for writing with Google Docs. Now, early on, I mentioned how you could actually earn more money teaching online and not have to work for a school or to sign up for one of those online teaching platforms like Amazing Talker. There are lots and lots of people all around the world trying to learn English, and there's many ways that you can get in contact with them, often for free. So the best way that I found is actually using Facebook groups. Personally, I am a member of many IELTS Facebook groups, and I literally just go in there and I'm just helpful. I answer questions. Sometimes I will suggest videos from my other channel, the IELTS Grind, if you want to check that out. And just generally, I'm in there to help. And the more you do that, the more of a reputation you'll get. What you don't want to do is you should never ever go and spam a Facebook group. If you're going to put up an ad or anything like that, always get permission from the admin first. Talk to them about it, see how they like things to be done. And another great tip is if you want to do an advert for your teaching, then you should do a video, a bit like this. All you have to do is film yourself on your phone, put it up onto Facebook. You can do that for free. And then when you put that video into the Facebook group, suggesting your services, creating a class, it's going to come across as more professional because they can see your face, they can hear what you sound like, and it's going to build a lot more trust than if you just write a message. And to be honest, I've seen lots and lots of people trying to create groups of students and trying to teach, and many of them are just really, really bad. They don't use proper grammar in their advert. You can clearly see that they're not a proper English teacher. So there is opportunity. And if you're any good at this, if you've been teaching even for a few months, you're going to do much better than those people. So if you want to find out more about how to do this online, I'm going to create a PDF which will be in the description, which explains exactly what you need to do with loads of tips. Now you can take this one step further and be even more professional and set up your own website. Now, if you want to do this, you can do it for absolutely free. There's lots of these free online platforms, Wix and things like this. But what I would recommend is if you're going to treat this like a real business and you want to come across as professional, you should go down the self-hosting route. This is where you actually have a website that you set up on a hosting plan, and it's really simple to do, and it's going to come across much better. And this is actually what I do, and you can set up an entire business and it can be very profitable indeed. Now, if you want to know exactly how to start up your own website, how to start up your own YouTube channel, I'm also going to leave a link to a nice handy little cheat sheet which is in the description, and it will tell you exactly what I did to do what I'm doing now. But what if you've watched this entire video and you're not actually a teacher yet? You're just thinking, is this something which will work for me? Well, look in the description because I'm also going to recommend how you can get the training that you need to go and work online as a teacher or anywhere in the world. Now, you can do this as online courses, or you can do this as in-person courses, and I will talk about which ones I recommend, and there's a link to that in the description, how to become a teacher. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget, give me a like, because then more teachers will see this. And if you want to see more videos like this, well, you know what to do. Subscribe.